Hey everyone, Sean Visintainer here from the Silverbow Fly Shop in Spokane, Washington. Today we're on the North Fork of the Coeur doing a little pre-runoff fishing. Water levels have come up just a little bit, but there's still plenty of pockets to fish. And today I just want to show you what type of water to fish when you're hitting it on foot and how to fish it. Alright, so we got our streamer set up here on a sink tip, and you know, this eddy is actually relatively pretty easy to fish, but when you're hitting these on foot, you want to position yourself so you can fish all those slow current seams. And when you cast out into the eddy, you want to mend and give your fly and line some slack. That way that fly drops down and sinks to the bottom, and then just begin your retrieve. Now, fish are pretty lethargic this time of the year, so they're not going to chase it down a really fast move fly. But if you just cast out into that eddy, into that nice soft pocket, mend it, give it slack. Now again, depending on your position in the pool here, will determine on which way you need to mend and cast, but give it that slack, allow it to sink, and then begin that retrieve. And the retrieve is typically just a strip with a little pop, strip with a little pop, or short strips with little pauses in between. And you sometimes need to mix that up and see what they're in the mood for. But that should really be all you need to do when fishing a streamer through a back eddy situation. Alright, so in addition to fishing streamers during pre-runoff on the North Fork of the Coeur and St. Joe type of rivers, you can also fish nymph setups. Nymph setups are really good to fish through back eddies. You do fish them a little differently though than a streamer setup. Streamers you retrieve, nymphs you need to dead drift them through the eddy. So in this particular situation, I'm just going to pop my nymph right out onto the edge of that current there. I'm going to mend downstream though, because I have a swirling eddy here. This eddy is actually coming back up and around, causing drag on my fly. So if I mend downstream, that gives me enough slack so that fly can ride that outer edge of that eddy and then come back around. And as it comes back around, I do need to manage that slack, so I do need to retrieve it back in. And I also may need to mend it once again. So depending on position in the eddy will kind of dictate how you mend things and how you set it up. But just keep in mind, mend it, give it slack, and manage that line and let that fly drift through the eddy. All right, let's take a look at another piece of water when you're fishing pre-runoff up on the North Fork of the Coeur or St. Joe River. This particular piece of water is a little different than that last back eddy we were in. You can see we've got a long, fast run, and as it breaks off those rocks right up here on to my right, it creates this nice soft pocket right in between the bank and that middle section of the river. So these nice soft current seams will hold trout during these colder months. It's a great area to rip or streamer through. If I was streamer fishing, I would just kind of shoot it right out into that current, strip it back like we talked about. And then also with a nymph, I would just cast up and across into these currents and then let it drift back slowly. You actually don't even need to wade fish out into the river this time of the year when the water's up a little bit. I'm actually just standing on the rocks, and I could easily just pick this bank apart and work my way up to the top there. And there should be fish all the way from the tail out here all the way up to that inside corner where it breaks off that bank. One little tip I have for you in not just reading the water and how to fish it, but is actually how to cast in these situations. Now this bank isn't super brushy, but I know as a wade angler you get frustrated from having all that brush behind you and it's hard to make a cast, and that's why it can be a lot less inviting to fish during higher water periods. But when you've got situations like this and let's say you're a right-handed caster, you've got, if I were to cast off my right shoulder, I'd be casting right into the brush most of the time. But a little trick you can do is to actually, let's go ahead and do this right now. I'm just going to pitch a little bit of line out, and instead of casting off my right shoulder and right into the brush all the time, I can actually point backwards, shoot it up towards the bank, and I can visually see where that fly is going, and then backhand it right out and into the river. Let's take a look at how that looks like, or what that would look like. Just nice and simple like that. Let's do that again. Up, back, shoot it out, and then you can fish it through that soft water. All right, that wraps up our segment on walk-wade fishing pre-runoff on the North Idaho streams. We're going to break down the rods and head back to the shop. If you guys have any questions, feel free to swing by or check out silverbowflyshop.com or our YouTube channel, Silverbow Fly Shop, and we'll see you around. Thanks.